Yeah. Talk to me about frameworks, Jack. I love the idea of frameworks because there's something like a yellow brick road about it. Like if I go into the dentist and my outcome goal I want is to have clean, straight, white teeth, the dentist doesn't just tell me to do one thing. He doesn't just say, hey, just brush your teeth and you're good. He gives me a framework, like a recipe. He's like, brush twice a day, floss once a day, come back once every 2 months for a whitening and a checkup and a root canal or whatever his framework is. And that gets me the outcome I want. If the outcome I want is to be a professional cyclist, how do I start approaching this framework question?
Yeah. Okay. So this is literally the whole book. So I've thought about this quite a bit. So, I mean, okay, here's the keys that you need to know. The best rule I can think of is to build a great team of mentors. So you need to build your team of mentors who to learn from, and that's the best resource you'll get. And for me, it was 4 guys. It was Swain Tuft, Paolo Saldana, Kevin Field, and Mike Creed. And those were guys where I just realized that I'm very stubborn. I'm bad at listening. So when they speak, I'm going to shut up and just listen. And so,
Swain's also, I've had him on the podcast a couple of times.
Yeah, Swain is outside of that guy has given me. He's like family to me. He's really been unbelievable to me. But build a great team of mentors. Learn how to ask intelligent questions and reach out. Because also I've had Chris Froome and Annemiek van Vleuten were both 2 people that gave me so much of their time. And they invite me to go training, spend time with them, answer questions. I never thought I'd even speak to these people. I was so nervous to even be around these people. And they're giving me all this advice. And they're really, if you know how to ask intelligent questions, you're respectful, you don't ask for favors, you would be amazed at how much help you can get from people because they know what it's like to be chasing that dream. That's the first thing.
So just to get tactical on that, this is intimidating as, cycling's changed a lot, even in, from my generation to yours, it's changed quite a bit because you could be a pro cyclist at 27, 28, no problem. Or you could even start your career at that age. Now, you're 28, with due respect, it's going to get more and more difficult for you to step up to the world tour at that age. You're looking at kids now at 17, 18, making that step and signing development contracts. At that age, how do you start cultivating mentor relationships? Are you cold reaching out to people on social media? Are you trying to engineer your way into their group rides, or what's your process?
Yeah, to reach out to mentors, I would say, just be willing to reach out. And not everybody's going to give you an answer, but you would be stunned at. So with Chris Froome and Annemiek, for example, those are 2 really big stars. And so the way I got in contact with them is I was invited to a training camp with Chris Froome, and with Annemiek, I happened to be at a training camp, and she was also there, and she just invited me to go training with her a couple times. So those weren't reaching out on Instagram, but with a lot of pros, it's a lot of just reaching. If you can get in contact with them, as long as I would say, reach out to that way. I think that's, as long as you're respectful, you're humble. It's hey, this, because they understand what it's like, and you would be amazed at, they will give a young athlete more time, when it comes to giving advice, often more than a journalist who could actually do something for their career. A journalist that's going to write a nice story about them, they're probably going to be less motivated for that than to help a young kid because they remember what that was like.
So that's your first thing you would do as a kind of an aspiring. What's our next step?
So have a great team of mentors. That's the first thing. You got to get to Europe as soon as you can. That's it's a different sport, and whether you're coming from Canada, the US, Australia, any of that, it's unfortunately you do have to get to Europe. A very big thing, and so I talk about this a lot on my podcast, is just talking to other pro cyclists and asking them basically the question you just asked me, if you miss that cutoff, if you miss that under 23 cutoff, how do you make it now? And the reality is, it used to be the biggest step in pro cycling was the jump up to the World Tour. Now the development teams are so good that the bigger step is actually from the club teams to the development teams, because the development teams are basically World Tour now. You look at the best under 23 and junior teams, it's basically a World Tour team. So if you miss that pipeline, it's incredibly hard to make it.
Can I push back on the get to Europe point? I do think it's important to look for signals of success along the way, because we're seeing this duality emerging where you're seeing a lot of riders who live in a little bit of a vacuum where they have all the nice kit, they like rolling to the coffee shop, they like getting their Cat 1 race license, but their kind of identity is built on training a little bit harder and a little bit smarter than some of their peers and beating up on guys who aren't at their level. They're like I had a gangster on the podcast, and he had a brilliant expression about being a gangster. And he said, everyone wants to be a gangster until it's time to be a gangster. And I just think that's so applicable to cycling as well, because everyone wants to be a bike rider until it's time to be a bike rider. There's a difference between being the Cat 2, Cat 1 guy who wants to pose and wear a good kit and being the dude who's stuck in an echelon in a race in Europe. Not everyone is cut out for the second life. So I think you do need to look for signals of success to get to Europe, or else you're going on an extended, Rasmus here, where you're going away for a gap year and not really aspiring to be a pro cyclist.
Totally. Yeah.
Really
okay. So I guess
separating the dreamers, I suppose, is what we're trying to do here, like the dreamer filtration.
Yeah. And so I guess I sort of skipped a step there. So the nice thing about cycling is it's very easy to see, like if you have like the physical engine to do it. And it just like an example I'd give is like 2018 was my last year racing in North America. I had a good year there. And by the end of that year, I was talking to 5 different World Tour teams, and all of them said the same thing. It's like you have the engine and the results in North America to show you belong at the highest level, but we need to see it in Europe, because the 2 things they're looking for in Europe is, one, do you know how to race your bike in Europe, and how are you going to adapt to living in Europe? And I thought that was crazy at the time, and then I went to Europe and I realized how right they are. So it's like, if you really want to make it as a pro cyclist, it's like you got to make sure, like, don't be delusional. You do need to make sure like you are strong enough, you're fit enough, like you can handle this stuff. But you also need to understand, if you're not from Europe, the harder barrier for you is you need to go now rebuild a whole new life in Europe. It's like right now, if you're a young kid in North America, wherever, it's like you're doing these amazing power numbers in a very comfortable environment. Maybe you're still living at home where the fridge refills itself and you don't have to pay rent. Like, now go rip up that life and go do it in Europe, where you have to handle all that stuff as well.
So if you like this video, you should definitely check out this video, because I know you're going to love it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.